we can hear you.
This is Kathy. I can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go ahead and call our regular meeting to session at the present time at 6 o'clock, 6:01. Ada, will you take a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mr. Rader.
Here.
Dr. Ramos. Mrs. Reyes.
Here.
Mrs. Sashanek.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, could we all take a minute then and stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance? You do it there with your voice instead of mine. You'll be able to do it the best way you can there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. We'd like to now take a moment to reflect upon a moment of silence to reflect upon those individuals that may need certain thoughts, prayers on their behalf. I know Lorenzo Sierra and other members and friends of your family may be affected or whatever. Let's just take a couple of minutes here. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any statements from any of the board members that you would like to make at this time?
This is Amy, and I have one.
Please, Amy, go ahead, Amy.
A few weeks ago, I was able to attend a virtual parent community meeting about a program we have in the district called Achieve 3000. And I was really excited to see how personalized and differentiated the instruction was. And there were some great parents were just being great, and they were asking great questions, and the presenters were really on topic and were able to answer all the questions. So I appreciated having that program for our students, and then having the ability to have parents log in and see what the program's all about, and to have them be able to ask questions so that they understood. So I just wanted to thank everyone who put together that town hall and allowed our parents to have that opportunity.
Thank you. I enjoyed that. I was part of that too, and I appreciated that and enjoyed that. Learned a couple of things as well. John.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to echo your words again and take a moment to send our thoughts and prayers to Representative Lorenzo Sierra. I know Lorenzo's a tremendous advocate for our community and a friend to the board, and I just want to wish him a full and speedy recovery. I also did want to note that I was able to attend the NSBA Joint Council Series on data-driven budgeting. Really interesting discussion regarding how to incorporate high quality data into your decision-making processes and reallocating resources to address disproportionate impacts of COVID, in particular on minority communities. So appreciated the opportunity to participate in that, and that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, John. Any of the rest of you? Appreciate that very much.
I don't have a request to speak. I just wanted to let you know that I'm present.
Thank you, Perlette. Appreciate that. Would you note that, Ada? Thank you. Dr. Freeman, would you like to share your report with us?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, buenas tardes a todos, and good evening, everyone. I'll start out by sharing an important deadline that's been extended just last night, and that is the voter registration deadline. Citizens can register to vote now until October 23rd. That I think may be a special consideration by the court because of the impact of COVID, and I hope it means that many more voters will have their voices heard this election. Early voting period starts tomorrow, and you'll have until October 27th to mail back your ballot. If you don't have one, then you can still request a ballot by mail until October 23rd. It's cutting it pretty close, so don't wait. If you haven't registered to vote or requested a mail ballot or cast your ballot, then why don't you do it now? Help us show our students that we value our democracy and our ability to choose who is in office, so they will know you matter, they will know you've been heard, and they'll want to emulate you in the future. I'm very pleased to share that our dynamic digital learning model is no way slowed down our mission to create high quality, comprehensive, success-oriented learning and leading opportunities for everyone in our schools. Our students and their families have been engaged in the schools and multiple academic, civic, character forming activities. And there continue to be many challenges for both teachers and families trying to juggle all of the school requirements and everything else that life requires. It turns out that this is a lot of, Amy, it turns out that this is a lot of work. I think if nothing else comes from these past months, we should have a greater appreciation for the different roles played by other people. Quinton STEM Academy was approved as a model PLC school by Solution Tree and was recognized with a flag delivered last Friday morning to their school. To receive this honor, the school must demonstrate a commitment to professional learning committee concepts or community concepts, implement those concepts for at least 3 years, and present clear evidence of improved student learning. The 6-year PLC process has supported Quinton STEM Academy's student achievement and improved the culture and strong teacher retention rates. Our congratulations go out to the Quinton staff, both current and former, for their hard work and dedication to become a PLC model school. Our showcase this month will include another of Quinton STEM's school-wide improvement efforts by reviewing the A+ application process. This past year, 44 schools are awarded the A+ school status, and we plan to find out later this evening, hopefully in the meeting tonight, if Quinton will be one of the schools receiving this honor. Later in this meeting, we'll have 3 proclamations for approval by the board, one for bullying prevention, one for National Principals Month, and one for National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. However, I'd be remiss not to mention other recognitions that occurred during the month of October, such as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We're also in the midst of National Hispanic Heritage Month, where we recognize the contributions and the important presence of Hispanic and Latin Americans in the U.S. And I'll report on some of those activities next month. With recent legislation around Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day, all Arizonans are engaged in active, informed, and responsible participants to our communities. In Littleton, STEM computer science middle school students created social media pages for selected delegates from the Second Continental Congress to engage in current events related to the politics and participating in the Kids at Hope and Law for Kids program. Collier participated in a few mock elections and civil engagement activities and education as well. iCivics was one of the resources used to take students on a role of the president, justice, and lawyer, and they had to navigate the those are actually roles in the program iCivics that was launched by Sandra Day O'Connor. If you haven't played that, it's interesting even for grown-ups, but you pick a role and then they had to navigate the challenges of that role. At Fine Arts, the 4th graders engaged in a weekly studies unit that focused on learning about becoming a citizen, rights of citizens, voting, responsibilities of citizens, and being informed, serving on a jury, being a global citizen. The students learned that responsible citizens respect and protect the rights of others, contribute to the community, stay informed about issues, get involved in creating solutions. Many classrooms at Country Place participated in these lessons on civics and kids voting. As you know, one of the Littleton district helps prepare our students for life is by celebrating Kids at Hope destination events where whole families can time travel with their children. Collier is putting together a virtual teacher destination bulletin board. Each bulletin board will be a link to creative things that both teachers and their students are doing for Kids at Hope, social emotional learning, and bullying prevention. They're sharing these bulletin boards with families later this month. Country Place students have created class and personal mission statements that are future focused. During Country Place's Virtual Spirit Week, they held their Time Travel Thursday event for students and staff to wear their favorite college shirt or dress for their future profession. Fine Arts is launching a project called Destination 2045, and each quarter students will hop in their time machines and visit their future selves in one of life's 4 destinations. When they return to the year 2020, students will share the details of their journey by recording short video clips or creating photo collages. And Littleton STEM teams, with the guidance of Kids at Hope Committee, are adding information around ACEs and time travel to their SEL time and student data folders to ensure they are engaging students. Parents recently had the opportunity to attend the Achieve 3000 Parent Night, which both Mr. Nielsen and Ms. Sosnick attended. Thank you as well. They received information guiding students to attain reading measures of 1,300 lexals by the end of high school. That's important because it's the level considered proficient in reading ability enough to be successful in life after graduation. Students also identified a career they were interested in pursuing, tracking their progress on the skills necessary for the selected career. College and career readiness reports will help students track their growth year after year. 29 families attended that first ever virtual session, which is fantastic. And so thank you to everybody who helped put that together and attended. Last month, all the Littleton District staff members participated in a day of professional learning. Sessions included training on our newly adopted history and social studies curriculum, online student engagement platforms, blended learning strategies, and some time dedicated for educators to engage in PLCs or professional learning communities. Our support staff had the opportunity to engage in a range of specialized trainings aligned to their job duties. Those sessions support current dynamic digital learning models and assist teachers in developing targeted engaging lessons using technology that can be used by staff and students when they return to the classroom or really any time. Given everything else we're dealing with, we're really excited to announce the launch of a new, first time ever, necessity is the mother of invention, virtual athletic program. Scope and purpose of this program is to provide a structured framework for students to increase sport-specific knowledge, focus on health and wellness, and develop other school and life skills. Our 3 virtual clinics will cover each of the 6 sports offered in previous years, and each clinic will span the course of 30-hour-long sessions. Students will work with coaches across the district to set goals regarding their physical, social, emotional, and cognitive skill development. District coaching staff will work collaboratively to develop and manage plans to provide opportunities for direct skill building and practice. This opportunity is available to all 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, and the clinic will run October 26th through December 15th. Clinic 1 will offer co-ed soccer, basketball, and flag football. It's a unique opportunity to develop and support our student athletes during dynamic digital learning as they prepare for excellence in school this year and into their high school years. Before I end my comments, I'd like to remind everybody that the virtual parent student teacher conferences are this week, and we're encouraging parents to make an appointment if they haven't already done so. The digital platform may mean more flexibility for working parents. They can, if they have a computer at work, actually log right in from work, not have to travel to the school, and that may mean some more flexibility. So it's our hope we can get 100% participation this fall. In closing, I want to express our appreciation to Gary Dickinson with the Society of Automotive Engineers Foundation for their $6,750 donation to STEM professional learning materials for school staff and students, to Michael Carino for his donation of 500 masks for students at Fine Arts Academy. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Freeman. Appreciate that. All right, let's move on. Ms. Vandewater, you got a showcase you're going to share with us at this time.
President Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, I am excited to present to you our program showcase for this evening. Tonight, Quinton STEM Health Science Academy will showcase the process they engaged in to complete the A+ School of Excellence Award application. The A+ School of Excellence Award program began in 1983 as a way to identify, celebrate, and recognize educational excellence in schools throughout the great state of Arizona. In addition to showcasing outstanding public schools, the A+ program provides school teams with an outstanding comprehensive framework that serves as a basis for school self-assessment and planning. The A+ School of Excellence Award is a powerful energizer for increasing public confidence in recognized schools, often resulting in greater parent and community involvement, and even serves as an economic driver for some communities. A+ schools are celebrated and recognized as exceptional schools. Earning the highly prestigious award and coveted A+ designation spotlights the positive successes happening in public schools every day. Dr. Fife will now share Quinton's experience in writing and in submitting the application and the honor they received to have a site visit by a team of A+ Arizona Educational Foundation judges. She will also share the timeline for hearing about the final selection for this award. Dr. Fife, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President Nielsen, governing board members, Dr. Freeman, and members of the Littleton community joining us virtually. It is my honor to share with everyone the A+ School of Excellence process that we engaged in at Quinton STEM Academy. Next slide, please. The A+ School of Excellence is a program founded by the Arizona Educational Foundation to formally recognize and celebrate schools throughout Arizona who support educational excellence. Schools who receive the A+ award demonstrate quality and equity in their educational endeavors. They consistently display a commitment to academic excellence and continually adapt to the ever-changing educational environment. A+ schools practice student-centered learning and encourage teachers to be innovators. The school supports students with not only academics, but also their social, emotional, and physical needs. An A+ school will go beyond the norm to ensure that students, families, teachers, and staff are supported. To be considered as a candidate for the A+ School of Excellence Award, schools must have a current rating of an A or B by the Arizona Department of Education and have a history of demonstrating high student academic achievement and/or growth. Schools are then asked to complete an application that will share the story of the school with the Arizona Educational Foundation. The application requires an inclusive process that involves the perspectives and voices from various stakeholders. It allows site leadership to reflect on their journey and identify areas where their school shines. In the application, schools highlight programs and practices that set them apart from other schools. At Quinton, we elected to highlight teacher leadership, collaboration using professional learning communities to support high levels of student learning and teacher success, and our Walk to Intervention program to support student reading achievement. The application was skillfully prepared and included details and evidence of success from the aforementioned programs. Next slide, please. Here you can see some excerpts from the application submitted that exemplify teacher leadership, collaboration, and the mentality of success for all. The success seen at Quinton STEM Academy is predicated on the involvement of teacher leadership, allowing for not only voice in decision-making, but true distributed leadership in line with the overall goal of creating the positive culture of collaboration for all. This quote speaks to the opportunities teachers have to participate in leadership roles and changes that have been made based on their feedback. PLC has been a focus for supporting and growing our teachers and students. That aligns with our goal of positive culture with the focus on collaboration, as collaboration is key in order for the PLC meetings to produce high teacher and student outcomes. Collaboration using professional learning communities have become the norm at Quinton. They are how we collaborate within grade levels and grade bands and work to develop action plans to meet the needs of all students while growing teacher knowledge in content and pedagogy. At Quinton STEM Academy, we believe that children succeed when they are surrounded by adults who believe they can succeed, and we strive to build the collaborative culture with this focus in mind. In alignment with the Kids at Hope philosophy, teachers and staff at Quinton truly believe that all children are capable of success, and we strive to help them achieve that success daily. Up next is a short clip of our A+ School of Excellence application primary author, Ms. Samantha Armstrong, reflecting on the process and journey to become an A+ School of Excellence.
Reflecting back on the A+ process really allowed me to kind of look at what did unfold, and the story around that collaborative culture and that student-centered work is what really came out in the interviews from teachers, looking at the student data, interviewing parents. So it became apparent that our staff had grown over the time I had been there to a staff that really wanted to do that student-centered work, and our scores also reflected that. We were able to then really ramp up the PLC model school and be able to engage in the strong collaborative culture, doing what was best for our students, and we saw increased parent engagement as well as student involvement as a result. Overall, it was a wonderful experience, and I was proud to have been part of it.
The application submitted for Quinton STEM Academy was well written and highlighted all the wonderful attributes of the school. Because of this, we were identified to move on within the award process to an in-person site visit. Unfortunately, due to school closures at the end of the last school year, our site visit had to be postponed and would now be conducted virtually. This next clip is a quick overview of our school that we provided to the A+ School of Excellence judges who were selected to complete our site visit. The video briefly shares a little of what makes Quinton STEM Academy unique. Our virtual site visit occurred on September 14th and 15th. The visit began with the virtual tour of the school led by 5th grade student Jaylene Stewart. Jaylene welcomed the judges and walked the campus with them. On her tour, she shared with judges what a typical day at Quinton would look like, feel like, and sound like. She easily engaged in conversations with the judges and even made a few jokes. After the tour, the judges were provided with teacher schedules and links to join Google Meet sessions with students. The judges observed classes at all grade levels to include special areas. Additionally, they had the opportunity to view our first grade team engage in collaborative discussion around student learning during the team's professional learning community time, and our kindergarten team worked together to plan lessons for the upcoming week. You can turn the next slide, please. In their visit, they were also able to attend and participate in our teacher boot camp, developed to support teachers new to teaching and those new to Quinton. Their visit concluded with meetings with various stakeholders to include members of our classified staff, all our teachers, a select group of students, parents and members of the community, and lastly, school administration. The site visit went very well, and judges were impressed with the teaching occurring in distance learning and with how well spoken our student representatives were. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Schools who have been identified as an A+ School of Excellence will be formally notified tomorrow, October 7th. Schools selected will be presented with a banner and a monetary reward. The school will retain the title for 4 years as long as they maintain an A or B rating and continue to exhibit the exceptional qualities of an A+ school. Next slide, please. The staff, students, and leadership of Quinton STEM Academy have worked hard over the years to become an A+ School of Excellence, and we know in our hearts that we are already one. But don't take my word for it. Listen to what some of our students and teachers have to say.
We're A+ school because we are very supported and dedicated to what we do.
At Quinton care about the students.
The students learn a lot and the teachers make them learn a lot. And that's how it's a great school.
Quinton is an A+ school because every teacher at Quinton is dedicated to our student success, and we all try really hard to do our best for each of our students.
Quinton is an A+ school because everyone pays attention in the classes.
We are an A+ school because everybody
Finally, I would like to share that our hard work and dedication has paid off. Quinton STEM Academy has received official notification that we are officially an A+ School of Excellence. And I want to share on behalf of the leadership team that we could not be prouder of all our students, staff, teachers, parents, and community members who helped make this a reality. Thank you for allowing us to share this amazing process with everyone. I would now like to ask the governing board if there are any questions that I may answer.
Any questions, comments from the governing board? Wonderful presentation.
This is Kathy. I just wanted to say congratulations. That's not easy. We've not seen that in a long time. So it's very, very nice to see it. I know it's a lot of work. You deserve a lot of applause. And perhaps our other schools should stand up and take notice of all the great things that you're doing and see if we can mimic some of that behavior in other schools. So congratulations, very, very well done. Extremely proud of you, the community, and the children.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes.
Thank you, Kathy. Any of the rest of us?
Yeah, this is Mr. Rader. I just want to echo Kathy's statements and thank all of the teachers, staff, and administrators for their hard work to make this happen. We really do appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Rader.
And I'd just like to reiterate the same as Kathy and John and add to the mere fact that you've done it in a non-conventional way and still been successful at bringing the notoriety and the importance of this to the teachers, the students, and the school itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Nielsen.
Any others? Oh, Dr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. President Nielsen, members of the board. And I just wanted to take a minute to compliment Lonnie for picking up where the previous principal left off. I think that the work done under Mr. Atahini when Lonnie was his assistant laid a great foundation for this. The whole team deserves some credit. And like I said in my introductory remarks, it's been a 6-year PLC journey. And Quentin really has picked up the mantle on PLCs and signature programs and really integrated that into their work and their thinking and their spirit. And so we're really so pleased that through the continuity of the leadership transition and the staff, that they've been able to see this through, like you said, Mr. President, in a truly extraordinary transition, not like any other A+ review program. And it puts them in a very small minority of the schools in Arizona that are being recognized. Like I said, only 44. And it's truly an outstanding accomplishment. And I just want to echo my praise to the leadership and the staff, but really to the kids and the parents. If you meet that little girl who was leading there, I mean, she's amazing. And so I would suggest to the other schools along the line of Ms. Reyes is when you find a junior high girl who can represent your school that well, that's the year to put in, because they really have some top-notch kids over there at Clinton right now too. That's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Freeman. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Fife. Congratulations to the Quinton community.
And I guess I was so excited to hear the information about that, I actually skipped over the proclamations. Can we back up and read those proclamations?
I think that's the president's prerogative. Yeah.
Well, thanks. All right, if that's up there, I'll go ahead and read this one. I think there's, 3 of them to read. Maybe I'll share those around a little bit this evening. Bullying. Whereas bullying is physical, verbal, sexual, or emotional harm or intimidation intentionally directed at a person or a group of people. And whereas bullying occurs in neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, and through technology such as internet and cell phones. And whereas various researchers have concluded that bullying is the most common form of violence affecting millions of American children and adolescents annually, and whereas children who bully are at greater risk of engaging in more serious violent behaviors, and whereas children who witness bullying often feel less secure, more fearful, and intimidated. Now therefore, be it resolved that the governing board of the Littleton Elementary School District do hereby proclaim October as National Bullying Prevention Month, and be it further resolved that Littleton School, students, parents, recreation programs, religious institutions, and community organizations be encouraged to engage in a variety of awareness and prevention activities designed to make our communities safer for our children and adolescents. Thank you. Would one of the rest, one of you who would like to read the principal's recognition proclamation there?
I can.
Thank you.
Principals Month. Whereas the Littleton School District Governing Board, in coordination with the United States Congress, has declared the month of October as National Principals Month. And whereas principals are expected to be educational visionaries, instructional leaders, assessment experts, disciplinarians, community builders, public relation experts, budget analysis, facilities managers, special program administrators, guardians of various legal, contractual, and policy mandates and initiatives. And whereas the principals are entrusted with the education and development of young people, the most valuable resource. And whereas the principals set the academic tone for their schools and work collaboratively with teachers to develop and maintain high curriculum standards, develop mission statements, and set performance goals and objectives for schools to achieve educational excellence. And whereas the courageous vision, dedication, and determination of a principal provides the mobilizing force behind any school reform effort. And whereas to honor and recognize the contribution of all school principals and their assistants to the success of students in the Littleton Elementary School District, and to encourage everyone in our community to observe National Principals Month. And now, therefore, be it resolved in honor of the service of all school principals and to recognize the importance of their school leadership so that every child has access to a high-quality education, and to celebrate school leader accomplishments, the month of October is hereby designated in the Littleton School District to be National Principals Month.
Oh, I guess I better take myself off mute. Would one of the others of you like to read the domestic awareness one?
Mr. President, this is Mr. Rader. I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Whereas domestic violence is an issue affecting Arizonans in all communities, regardless of age, gender, economic status, race, religion, nationality, or educational background. And whereas 24 people in the United States are victims of intimate partner violence every minute. And whereas 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men have experienced physical violence or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. And whereas 30% of children exposed to intimate partner violence had their first exposure before the age of 2, and an additional 26% had their first exposure between the ages of 2 and 7. And whereas victims of domestic violence are more likely to experience long-term mental and physical health concerns, including a higher risk of chronic disease, substance abuse, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. And whereas challenges related to the COVID-19 global pandemic, including stressors such as unemployment, reduced income, limited resources, and social support may increase risk factors for family violence, whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an important opportunity to enhance education, prevention, and intervention efforts around domestic violence, and support organizations and individuals who provide advocacy efforts, services, and assistance to victims. Now, therefore, the Governing Board of the Littleton Elementary School District joins Governor Ducey in proclaiming October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. All right. Now we'll move on to item number 8, call to public. Ada, have we had any requests or any information from any electronic or any device?
We do not this time.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 9, the consent agenda. Are there any members of the board that would like to pull any of those items in the consent agenda?
Mr. President, I would like to pull item 9B3.
9B3. Okay. Are there any others any of you would like to hold at this particular time? If not, could I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as written minus item 9B3?
This
I
is
move
Amy.
approval of the consent agenda excluding item 9B3.
Thank you for that.
This is Amy, and I'll second.
Thank you.
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sashina.
Aye.
Thank you so very much. Okay, John, I'll turn the time over to you to talk on that just for just a few minutes here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So first of all, I'd just like to say the item that I pulled is for the OLE immersion opportunity that we provide our teachers in Mexico. And I am certainly a strong advocate for that program and supporter for the continuation of our teachers to participate in this wonderful opportunity. However, I do have a little bit of concerns in approving the item right now, just because of the current public health situation that's going on. I'm not sure it's prudent, at least in my opinion, to approve travel to Mexico at this time. Again, I'm a huge supporter of the program and would like an opportunity to vote yes on this. So I was wondering if the board would indulge me in maybe tabling this to a future meeting when we have a little bit better guidance on what the year is going to look like, and hopefully, while things are changing rapidly, a better idea about the public health situation.
This is Kathy. I could support that.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Kathy. Then can I have a motion to, can we table that? Can I have a motion and then to table item 9B3 until such time as we can safely send our teachers and administrators down there?
Thank you. I'll move we table item 9B3.
Thank you, John.
This is Kathy. I'll second that.
Thank you, Kathy.
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sashina.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Moving on, let's look at item number 10. Ms. Vanderwater, we'll turn the time back to you.
President Rader, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman. Before introducing our three principals to present their school's integrated action plans, I would like to provide you with a brief overview and reminder of the integrated action plan and school improvement process. The comprehensive needs assessment, root cause analysis, and integrated action plan for all Title I schools includes Title I, II, III, IV, school improvement, and move on when reading. Schools use the 6 principles, indicators, and elements to identify strengths and needs in order to increase student achievement and strengthen school systems, leading to sustainable improvement. The primary needs identified in the comprehensive needs assessment become the foundation for the school's integrated action plan. The local education agency integrated action plan is based on the school's comprehensive needs assessment findings. It supports the implementation of the school integrated action plan. In order for Title I schools to receive and maintain federal school funding for continuous improvement, the Arizona Department of Education requires all schools to complete a comprehensive and rigorous process. Each school is mandated to conduct a thorough and reflective data analysis to determine needs, implement necessary systems change with evidence-based practices throughout the continuous improvement cycle. Then equitable, strength-based local education agencies and schools will increase system and individual capacity, ensuring equity, excellence, and innovation, resulting in increased student outcomes. Tonight, each principal will highlight for the community and governing board 2 of the 6 goals that were established as a focus for the FY21 school year. It does not mean that the school community is not working on all 6 goals, but for their presentation this evening, they will be sharing 2 of them. At this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Michael Cagle, principal from Country Place Leadership Academy.
Good evening, President Nielsen, members of the board, Dr. Freeman, executive team members and members of our Littleton community. Hope everyone's doing well this evening. Thank you for this opportunity for us to share our highlights of our integrated action plan here from Country Place. So we're going to share with you 2 goals this evening. Our first goal that we're going to focus on centers around the idea of growth mindset. As a Leader in Me school, we participate in student, staff, and community surveys. And by analyzing the results of that work, we determined that growth mindset was an area of opportunity for us. So we want to increase the knowledge and instruction of brain research on learning and potential of our students for all staff members. So we are looking to improve our scores on the measurable results assessment by 10 points in growth mindset from last year to the end of the year this year. And we plan on increasing opportunities for training on the learning potential of each student, increasing opportunities for students to learn about the brain research on growth mindset themselves, and provide rigorous tasks and leadership projects that allow students to showcase their genius. Success criteria or evidence that these measures are working will see an increase in instruction and social emotional learning, growth mindset, and student potential during classroom walkthroughs and teacher rounds. And we should also see an increased score in our area of engaging students in learning on our Littleton observation rubric as evidenced in our walkthroughs and observations. Our second goal that we're focused on this year is improving student scores in mathematics. So we would like to see an increase in 10% on our AZM2 scores from 2 years ago to at the end of the year this year. And we plan on doing that by increasing opportunities for training on using rigorous tasks and evidence-based practices and the effective use of our core materials. We plan on increasing training and implementation of success criteria for students and promote teacher collaboration by continuing to implement professional learning communities school-wide with a focus on the use of formative assessment. Success criteria evidence that our efforts are being successful will be an increase in proficient and highly proficient students on our interim assessments, the use of rigorous tasks, evidence-based practices, and effective use of our core materials that's evident in our walkthroughs and rounds, and increases in our instructional efficacy scores on our Leader in Me student survey, and also on our teacher expectation scores on the Leader in Me survey as well. So that's a summary of 2 of our goals at Country Place this year, and we'll open for any questions by members of the board.
Any questions while we have Dr. Cagle there?
All right, thank you very much.
I think, Dr. Cagle, just the only question, you mentioned walk-arounds there, observe and whatever. Does that walk-around physically mean walk-around like later next year, or how do we handle that with the distance learning that we're in right now?
Yeah, as we have transitioned into virtual learning, much of our work has also become virtual. So if we have virtual classrooms, we do virtual walkthroughs as well. So we're transitioning into that land. Same thing with observations. If we have virtual teachers, we'll have virtual observations. So as we move into hopefully more in-person instruction, we'll have a mixed, a mixed method there. Where sometimes we'll be walking into classes, other times we'll be jumping into a Google Meet and observing and participating in that manner.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Cagle. I would like to introduce Mr. Eric Atuhani, principal from Littleton STEM Computer Science Academy, to present his 2 goals.
Greetings and good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Freeman, and the executive team. I'm pleased to share Littleton STEM Academy's integrated action plan. Our first goal is to raise student achievement by an overall average of 15% for math and English language arts from kindergarten through 8th grade on each quarterly interim assessment. An interim assessment is an assessment that is given after students have learned a specific set of standards over a quarter. At Littleton Elementary School District, we have 3 district-level interims that are given at the end of each quarter. We will focus on implementing professional learning communities to reach this goal. Professional learning communities is a practice that lets teachers work in teams in order to concentrate on the right work in schools, which is collaborating, focus on student learning, and student results. As teacher teams focus on the right work, it permits us to build a professional organization that centers on meeting the needs of all students. Professional learning communities will lead us to strengthen our staff culture, improve teacher effectiveness, and raise student achievement. We began the journey to implement effective and efficient professional learning communities at Littleton STEM in the summer. We're able to use our school funds to complete 40 hours of professional development via Zoom with 16 of our teacher leaders. This allowed us to lay the foundation with these staff members in order to support a fluid start to the school year with professional learning communities. We have implemented bi-weekly professional learning community leadership PDs for our 16 teacher leaders and have made professional learning communities the focus of our Q1 staff development plan. We will measure the success of our implementation through the weekly assessments that students take in order for teachers to evaluate teaching and learning, and through our professional learning community rubric that we use to provide feedback and score teams' effectiveness and efficiency. The strong implementation of professional learning community meetings will lead us to reach Goal 1. Goal 2 focuses on increasing staff retention. Great schools have happy, hardworking teachers that have been at their sites for an extended period of time. This helps in knowing the community, owning the growth of the school, and building relationships with colleagues and students. Goal 2 reads, at Littleton STEM Academy, we will improve the quality of professional development by meeting the needs of all staff members with differentiating the content delivered by the end of the school year, which will improve staff retention from 80% last year to 90% this year. This comes up to approximately 5 additional teachers retained. We want to focus on delivering high quality professional development that meets the varied needs of our staff. We will establish a professional development committee that is composed of staff members that represent the different parts of the school, and they can work collaboratively to create high quality PD that helps all staff members grow. The meaningful PD that is produced and delivered will help the teacher effectiveness and in turn increase student achievement. We will monitor the quality of the PD through our professional development feedback system called My Learning Plan. This is our district system that allows staff to provide feedback to facilitators. We use this information to review as a PD committee and make the necessary refinements to improve our practice. Staff will also have individual growth plan journals where they will be able to reflect on their student data, student learning, and teaching practices. Evidence for Goal 2 will be to have planning meetings facilitated by teacher leaders running professional learning community meetings, and steady growth with our quarterly interim assessments. Quality professional development will help with the retention of staff at Littleton STEM Academy. I want to thank you for your continued support, and that concludes my IAP. Any questions?
Any questions from the governing board? Not that you just say that those are challenging goals, especially with teacher retention, and I appreciate that very much. If there's no other questions, just go ahead and do one more.
Thank you, Mr. Atahaney. I would now like to welcome back and introduce Dr. Lonnie Fife, principal from Quinton STEM Academy, to share her integrated action plan. Dr. Fife.
Hello once again. Good evening, President Nielsen, members of the governing board, and Dr. Freeman. Thank you for the opportunity to share Quinton's integrated action plan for the 2020-2021 school year. I will focus on 2 goals tonight. The first goal I would like to share is, during the 2020-2021 school year, Quinton STEM Academy teachers will, Teachers will score at the effective, highly effective levels in the areas of demonstrating knowledge of content and pedagogy and designing coherent instruction on the Littleton observation rubric to support high levels of student achievement as measured by informal and formal student assessments. In order to guide student learning, teachers must have command of the subjects they teach. They are also aware of typical student misunderstandings and work to dispel them. But knowledge of the subject area is not sufficient. To increase student academic achievement, teachers must also be familiar with instructional practices and strategies best suited to each content area. Teachers excelling in this understand that a well-designed lesson plan addresses the learning needs of various groups of students. One size does not fit all. When teachers demonstrate high levels of knowledge of content pedagogy and instructional planning, we will see increases in student academic success. We are supporting the development of the teacher's skills, knowledge, and abilities needed to plan for high-quality instruction by providing time within the schedule to collaborate with colleagues in professional learning communities and to participate in intentional professional development around planning, preparation, and delivery of high-quality instruction. Additionally, teachers receive constructive, positive feedback from administration during informal observations and walkthroughs. Professional development designed to increase their knowledge of instructional practices and subject area are provided by school site and district personnel utilizing district resources. Evidence of our success for this goal would be noted in teacher lesson plans and in viewing how students interact with the learning. In their weekly meetings, teachers will engage in collaborative discussions around best instructional practices, what supported student learning, what did not, and what changes could be made. Increases in teacher evaluation scores in the areas of content and pedagogy and designing coherent instruction will indicate success, as well as increases in student scores on informal and formal assessments. I would now like to share our second goal. By May 2021, Quinton STEM Academy will reduce the number of Step 4 parent-teacher conferences by at least 15% as measured by the number of behavioral conference requests submitted by teachers. An essential skill of teaching is that of managing relationships with students and ensuring that relationships among students are positive and supportive. Teachers understand that students attend school to not only increase academic knowledge, but also grow themselves socially and emotionally. Research has shown that self-management promotes positive relations with others, and a positive school climate fosters academic achievement and promotes self-worth and emotional well-being. We support the growth of students' social and emotional growth using brain breaks, structured play, the promotion of healthy eating, exercise, and mental health activities and/or exercises. Students and teachers have developed student agency or data folders that students use to create, monitor, and reflect on goals they have made for themselves. Teachers meet with students to provide them with the guidance and encouragement they need to achieve the goals they have set for themselves. During morning meetings, teachers wisely use the time to build relationships with students by engaging in conversations about their hobbies, thoughts, and feelings. Even while we are in a distance learning model, teachers ensure that students are provided with brain breaks. Brain breaks are mental breaks designed to help students stay focused and attentive. Success for this goal would include a reduction of Step 4s and increases in student participation, as noted during whole class academic and non-academic activities. Students will see evidence of their success by advancing towards or reaching the goals they have set for themselves in their data folders. Thank you for your time. I will address any questions or comments by the governing board may have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Any comments, questions from the board?
This is Kathy. I just have a comment. I think you should phrase the word brain break. I'm going to use that from now on.
What, do you need one of those once in a while?
Unfortunately, more often than not. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes.
Thank you. Any of the rest of you?
Sure, I have a question.
Please, Burdette, go ahead.
And it's regarding the number of Step 4 parent-teacher conferences. Can you speak to, I know that I see the desired decrease that is that will be targeted for the next year, but was there an increase over prior years, or can you speak to how or why this particular goal was selected?
Yes, we always want to ensure that our students are in class and participating, and we know that when a student chooses a step 4, that there may be some time out of the classroom, and just in general, we want to reduce that because we know that our students need to be in the classroom learning and growing. And so there hasn't necessarily been an increase. We just want to continue to grow our students in all areas.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any of the rest of you? Or as a board, we would like to thank you, all the principals, for their presentation. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
All right. Do we need a brain break right now?
School finance.
Oh, let's do school finances first. Ms. Kinder, are you here with us tonight?
Mr. President, this is Dr. Kelly, and I'm getting text since I'm running the meeting that her screen froze at home, like right as Dr. Fife was finishing. And so she's trying to log back in. So if we could give her just a 30-second or 1 minute brain break, she's going to get right back on here.
You can probably go ahead and pull up the presentation.
Yeah, if you'd like to pull up the presentation, so that'll at least be up. So when she gets back there, we can just follow through with that. Thanks.
Mr. President, if I may, while we're waiting for Ms. Kinder, we have a slide in the presentation coming up in the AFR tonight we have never had before, and that's because of the grants for COVID relief. And there's kind of a timetable in there as to where that grant impacts the budget. And because of the window in the law, the grant impacts last year's budget and this year's budget. So it's a little confusing in that we had to go back after the board already set a budget for last year and credit some grant money to that budget, then move some other money forward for this year when we're going to have to adopt a budget that's smaller, even though the district staff didn't shrink. And so we put together kind of a calendar timetable. It's a new slide this year, and Ms. Kinder will try to explain the impact. I think it will help when she puts the numbers in to make it make sense. But it is made a dramatic difference in the AFR presentation that the board typically sees. And there she is. Okay, so I'll turn it back to her.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. President Nielsen, members of the board, staff, and community, we're presenting our annual financial report for fiscal year 2019-2020 tonight for your approval. Arizona Revised Statute 15904 requires school districts to prepare and submit an AFR no later than October 15th of each year. And this annual financial report is a broad review of our reporting system of the district's operations and financial condition. And tonight we're going to be reviewing the highlights of this report. This next slide is our typical budget timeline. I believe Dr. Freeman was talking to you a little bit about that. I typically have these in past presentations when we've been presenting our proposed and adopted budget to give you an idea of the budget calendar for each fiscal year. I don't typically talk about it during AFR time, but we haven't had a typical year this year, so we wanted to point out a few things that were a little bit different. When we get to the next slide, you'll see that it's in a table format, and the column headings across the top that you have there are similar to the items that we just saw on the last list for our dates. the first row of fiscal year there is the 18-19, which was a typical financial year for our budget and our AFR. And then the next fiscal year you see is 2019, where it starts in the column of March 2019. You see where we had noted there that we would take a look at our revised ADM. We'd do our level and budget planning starting out for the following year. And then if you follow that same row across to the blue March column, that is where coronavirus came into our community and we were required to go to distance learning. So for the 1920 budget year, things began to be a little bit different about that particular time. We went to distance learning. We had our food service providing grab and go meals. Students were learning at their homes and online rather than in class. And there was a lot of differences going on through the end of the school year. Staying with that fiscal year, what we're looking at for tonight, going over to the May column, you see the 2020 Coronavirus Grant Fund. So we began learning about financial mechanisms, some grants, and also a reimbursement program that was going to provide some financial assistance to schools during the COVID-19 pandemic, and to take care of some of the expenses, the unexpected expenses that schools were experiencing during that time. So we then moved to October column there for, we see where we have carry forward revised. I meant to mention in the May, you may see that number one superscript there for ESSER. That was the first grant fund that we were hearing about at that time. And then you see in May there where we have the carry forward revised, and number two, there's going to be another grant that comes along that actually affected the carry forward that we're going to discuss tonight. So going down to the third row of our fiscal years, it would be the fourth row on the table. That's where we get into the 2021 budget year. That's the year that we're currently in. So in March, when we would have normally started planning for our next budget year and taking a look at our 100th day ADM, what we anticipated for the following year, we were still figuring out the distance learning and the coronavirus effects that was taking on the not only the budget, but also the district. In June and July, there were discussions about additional grant funding and budget discussions about how that would impact various school districts and the rules and the guidelines for each one of those funds. And then in December, January timeframe, the December board meeting, you're going to have the opportunity to approve a budget revision. And in that budget revision, we will have both the ESSER grant and the ESG grant inserted into the budget. So you'll find out a lot more about that, not only later in this presentation, but at the December revision. Our next slide discusses the three funding mechanisms that were specifically COVID-related funding. So I've lined these out in the order based on the dates of availability, and we'll just take a look at each one of them. So the first one there, DEMA. DEMA is the Department of Emergency and Military Affairs and is an offshoot of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. DEMA initiated their public assistance program to allow for reimbursement of COVID-19 related emergency response and personal protective measures. Initially, when we learned of this opportunity, we thought it was going to be much more expansive than it ended up being, but there were so many organizations that were qualified that applied for this type of assistance that DEMA was quickly, they were unable to sustain the level of reimbursements that everyone was asking for. So they were required to laser down to a very limited and very specific qualified expenditures so that they would be able to offer assistance to all of the organizations that did actually qualify to be a part of this program. So far, Littleton has filed $43,826 in expenses, and they have been approved as of October 5th. And we expect to receive reimbursement of $32,870. And that's because this particular program will reimburse at 75% of any of the expenditures that are submitted and approved. So the next grant that we have there is the second grant that I was talking about on the last slide, and that is the Enrollment Stabilization Grant. So the dates of availability for the Enrollment Stabilization Grant actually are March 1st of 2020 through December 4th of 2020. And what that means are any funds that the district receives have to be expended within that time frame from March 1st, no later than December 4th. So this particular grant is managed by eCivis, and it comes through the Arizona Governor's Office. So the way that they will determine school districts' allocation or eligibility for the Enrollment Stabilization Grant is they're going to conduct two formulas. And it will be the formula that results in the highest return for the district will be the determining factor. So the first formula is they will take fiscal 20 100th day ADM, and they will calculate that at 98%. Using our current year base level, but what 98% of that would be. So if we had 98% of all of our students from last year return with the new base level, what would the level of budget be at that particular formula? The second formula is they will take fiscal 21, our current year, 40th day ADM. So that would have been any students in place by September 25th would be counted for the ADM, and then the formula for that would be 105%. Whichever one of those formulas is higher is the formula that will be followed by the governor's office to replace or maintain our enrollment stabilization. That's where the name of the grant comes from. So the funds for this particular grant are very flexible, but as I mentioned earlier, they must be expended by December 4th. And we learned about this in late July to early August. We got the specifics and the rules actually mid-August for that. And you'll see there almost at the bottom of the slide that applications were due September 4th. We did submit our application, but we will not be officially notified. It can be as late as November 11th before we receive official notification of what that calculation will be and how it will be received. We are currently estimating that this is going to be approximately $3.9 million. And because of the time frame, the March 1st through the December 4th, we actually transferred $929,000 of fiscal 20 expenditures into the Enrollment Stabilization Grant. And then the remaining amount, which would be determined by the calculation of the governor's office, whichever one of those is higher, the remaining amount will be integrated into the fiscal 21 budget and will have to be spent by December 4th. And you'll hear more about that in December when Mr. French presents the budget revision in December. So the third column there is the ESSER grant. And the ESSER grant is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. This is the allocation that is tied to our district Title I allocation. So what that means is the state is looking at, and it's also managed by the Department of Education. I'm sorry. So Department of Ed is looking at the full state of Arizona's Title I funds received this year. They then divide each district's amount of Title I allocation into that total to determine the percentage. And then that percentage is applied to the statewide ESSER funds. So we have already received notification of the full amount that will be eligible for the ESSER funds. It's also very flexible, just as the ESG, but it's a little bit more flexible in that you'll see the dates that it's applicable there towards the top is these funds are available all the way through September 30th of 2021. So we found out about ESSER first. We started making allocations to ESSER. When we then received information about ESG and we saw the time frame, it was actually recommended by the Department of Education that we take everything we had initially earmarked for ESSER and move it into ESG because those funds had to be expended first. And then we would be able to use ESSER more through the year. So you can see that there's been a lot of moving pieces, a lot of interesting information shared, and you'll hear a lot more about that in December when you go through the revision. So the rest of the slides that we have here are the typical slides that we would normally present to you during the AFR presentation. So I'd like to first take a look at page 1 of the AFR, and that records our revenues received in our levy accounts. These accounts include our M&O fund, our unrestricted capital. You've also heard that mentioned as district additional assistance, our adjacent ways funds, and our debt service. And you can see from this chart that 31% of our support is in the form of property taxes, while the remaining revenue is from other sources, such as our state equalization, which is 61%, Our county equalization at 6%, and revenue in lieu of taxes is 1% of our revenue. Revenue in lieu of taxes are payments to districts with federal lands, and that makes up for the loss on property tax revenues, and these payments come from SRP. Our total revenue in all of these accounts was $45,427,277, a 9.34% increase in revenue from the previous year. Page 2 reports on our M&O fund, and it allows us to look at our expenditures in several different ways. So first of all, when we compare our expenditures from fiscal 2019 to fiscal 2020, we experience an overall 6.92% increase. When we include that transfer that I just spoke about, the $929,000, because that was originally M&O funds that we transferred to this grant fund. So looking at it overall, that was a 6.92% increase. After we made the transfer, the expenditures that remain in the M&O fund at the close of the year, we see a 4.3% increase over the previous year's M&O. So this increase is primarily due to two factors. One is the increase in the base support level. So we had an increase of $192.74 per ADM. And then we also had student growth, an increase of 235 ADM in fiscal 20. So let's take a look at our expenditures by program. Of the $37 million spent from the M&O fund, regular education comprised 76% of expenditures, with approximately 19% of expenditures covering our special education needs. Transportation requirements involved approximately 4%, with K-3 reading program accounting for the last 1% of expenditures. The slide that we're on now is also our expenditures, and this is looking at it by function. So all categories remained at approximately the same percentages as the past several years. Instruction comprised just under 58% of expenditures, with just over 14.5% of expenditures attributed to operations, with instructional and student support services combined to be 16% of expenditures. Administrative services includes business resources, human resources, information technology, campus, and district administration at less than 12%. Page 2 also gives us a breakdown by object or type of expenditure. Over 86% of our expenditures are attributed to employee salaries and benefits. This is the same percentage as the previous year, while purchase services and supplies comprise 9.5% and 4% respectively. Purchase services include employee training, repairs and maintenance, travel, utilities, as well as purchase professional services with positions such as OT and PT therapists when they're needed, along with contracted positions. Approximately 1/5 is being spent in the category of other, which includes dues and fees such as memberships for professional organizations. Moving on to our M&O budget overview, we can review our budget less expense by category, and here's where we determine our budget balance carry forward. So you see in our budget column there that we have a budget of $39,091,000, less expenses of $37,013,000, which leaves us with a budget balance carry forward of $2,078,000. This is a carry forward of 6.3%. When we presented the adopted budget in July, and it was approved by the board, that included at that time an anticipated carry forward of approximately 3.3%. It was a $1.14 million. Now that we've had the transfer of $929,000 to the ESG grant, the carry forward of the M&O fund is increased to 6.3% to strengthen the fiscal 21 budget. Please remember that in addition, there still remains approximately $3 million of eligible expenditures that will be transferred from the fiscal 21 M&O fund into the ESG fund before December, as well as $961,000 of expenditures that will be transferred to the ESSER grant. And all these funds and transferred expenditures will be, I apologize for my tongue tied. All of these funds and transferred expenditures will be reviewed with the board in the December revision. Now taking a look at our classroom site fund. Information for classroom site funds, also known as Prop 301 monies, can be found on page 3 of the AFR. We are required to separate the total Prop 301 revenues we receive as a district by a set percentage per fund. Each fund then has specific requirements for what may be used, and the District 301 plan directs the specific payouts for our district. Across the 3 funds, we had revenue of $2,875,000, and we had expenditures of $2,787,000. Our next slide is District Additional Assistance. You can find this on page 4 of the AFR. It is Fund 610, entitled as Unrestricted Capital on the report. Here we see that 40% of expenditures were for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, which includes purchases made at campus level, such as utility carts and sports equipment, as well as district level, including IT purchases that encompass software renewals, as well as computers and other technology needs, and operation purchases of equipment and vehicles. The construction services were both campus and district level projects at 31% of the funds expended, including full interior and exterior paint for 2 campuses, the remodeling of 1 building at the Littleton campus for the fiscal 21 Head Start program, shade structures, installation of the new playground structure at 1 campus, along with architectural services for several of these projects. Leases are just under 3% of expenses, and that was for Climatech energy management equipment and upgrades that were originated in February of 2010. And I am pleased to say that these were paid off in March of 2020, so that expense will no longer be reflected on future reports. This slide shows our Bonds 2017 series. We call this our 2017 series because in November of 2017, the voters gave the Littleton Elementary School District the authorization to sell $22.7 million in bonds. That authorization is good for 10 years. However, once we sell bonds, the funds must be expended within 3. So we carefully plan our phases out to reflect when we have expected expenditures so that we are selling the bonds at the time we need the cash. So we've had 3 sales so far. The first there in May of 2018 for $3.75 million. We had a sale in April of 2019 for $2 million. And then our last sale in May of 2020 for $2.95 million. So our total bonds sold to date are $8,700,000, which leaves us on a remaining authorization of $14 million. The next slide will review the expenditures so far. So our total bonds sold to date, $8.7 million. We have made land purchases of over $7 million. We made a down payment on our energy savings contract of $425,000, and we have purchased school buses for $332,000. So total expenditures to date are $7.785 million, which leaves us with remaining bond cash on hand of $914,000. Taking a look at our grants on page 5 of the AFR list out detail for each one of the grants, but I've summarized them for you here in our federal and state projects. So federal projects include our title allocations and IDEA grants, as well as E-rate and Medicaid reimbursement. The federal projects page is also where the enrollment stability grant expenditures are recorded. Federal grants are typically reimbursement grants, which means we spend the approved allocation and then we file for the reimbursement of the approved expenditures. This is one area that often reflects a negative balance. So that just shows that we are awaiting some reimbursements. You'll also note that we started with $645,000 in our federal projects. We had revenue of $2.79 million with expenditures of $3.48 million. Leaving us with a negative fund balance of $45,000. However, we did just file for the $929,000 for the ESG grant, so we anticipate that that's going to turn over very quickly. State projects that are reflected here include First Things First grant, along with a small gifted education grant, as well as the VW settlement grant that was provided to school districts to assist with purchasing some new school buses, and our school safety grant. The next slide allows us to look at our federal grants in the pie chart format, and we can review them by the particular grant fund. So as you see, our greatest expenditures were in the Title I grant with expenditures of almost 1.3 million, with the Enrollment Stability Grant coming in a close second at 929,000, and IDEA grant following with 764,000. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so very much for your presentation tonight. Any questions? Either everybody's taking a brain break or you did an excellent job of explaining it to us.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no questions, we need to take action on this one.
This is Amy, and I move the governing board approve the fiscal year 2019-2020 annual finance report as presented.
Thank you, Amy.
I'll second that.
Kathy, that's second. Thank you.
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos, Dr. Ramos,
You're muted. Out.
Well, if you're still there, you're muted still.
Still on the participant list.
yeah. Mrs. Reyes,
Yes.
Mrs. Soshenek,
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 12.
Oh, there she is.
Oh,
Dr. Ramos,
Yes.
You must have stepped away.
we're just asking for an agreement on the annual financial report. All right, let's move on. Item number 12. Ms. Kelly, would you like to review class site fund?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, we're asking the governing board to approve the fourth and final component of the Classroom Site Fund, or 301 plan. And I would like to take just a moment to thank and recognize the LEAP committee for their hard work and exceptional communication to the groups they represent. So the following employees represent all sites and employee groups across the district: Bertha Plaza, Brian D'Alessio, Cindy Landis, David Cooper, Eileen Rosas, Mia De La Rosa, Carrie Pitcher, Linda Stollard, Margie Hourahan, Melissa Saucier, Scott Popovich, Sue Chizzy, and Terry Fisher. So component 4, which is other measures of the educational impact that directly affects student achievement, has a value of $1,200, which is unchanged from the previous plan. The first part of this component is the community outreach goal. And the value of reciprocal communication between our schools and the families we serve is more important than ever in our current climate. No matter how much we communicate, it's never enough. So teachers had the opportunity to create a baseline recommendation for a minimum number of two-way communications, taking into consideration fourth quarter last year and much of first quarter this year. They took into account feedback from families that ranged from "I want more" to "I'm happy with the communication I'm receiving," to those that said they were overwhelmed by the number of contacts they were receiving, particularly at the middle grades. So after considerable dialogue about who was expected to make these contacts, general education teachers, special education teachers, special areas, interventionists, and related service staff, the LEAP committee is making the following proposal: that each teacher will promote two-way communication with students' families by documenting a minimum of 3 reciprocal responses per week, requiring interaction or additional support, which is above and beyond the communication blasts that they receive from classroom teachers, the school, and the district. This would equate to $250 for the second, third, and fourth quarter after the documentation is received. The second part of this component, being recommended by the LEAP committee, encourages teachers to participate in a professional development activity that provides teachers an incentive to earn their Google Education Certificate. This is recognition for both teachers and the district, as Google Classroom is the vehicle we use for the delivery of online instruction. The certificate is valid for 3 years, and there is on average 10 to 15 hours of learning and preparation for an exam that must be completed within a 3-hour time frame. The amount of $450 was arrived at by taking the average of the 2 board-approved hourly rates, one for receiving professional development, which is $20, and the other working with students, which is $26. The average is then $23. So $450 would compensate teachers for approximately 19.5 hours of work outside the workday to increase their knowledge and skill base for engaging students through technology. This would allow us to meet the original $1,200 allocation in that component. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of the board members might have this evening. And we are asking that the board approve component 4 for the classroom site fund.
All right, are there any questions?
This is Kathy. I just had some clarity. For the classroom site fund, the money was always earmarked for something. This is what the LEAP committee has chosen to think it's the most beneficial to spend the money on.
Member Reyes, that is correct. This was the component before that recognized teacher and student attendance, which is very difficult in our current climate to calculate and reward for because of the shutdowns and things like this. So this is their recommendation for a replacement.
Okay, so rather than the attendance marker, they're saying, give us this Google certification, pay for it, and this is our compensation for that.
Yes, and the test is $10, and we have received a significant amount of vouchers from Google themselves to allow our teachers to receive, to use the voucher to take the exam.
Just one more follow-up. How difficult is that exam? I mean, if they're already doing it, what is the goal of what they'll continue to learn, or will it really be that they'll get a certification?
Our technology department has worked to speak with teachers, and on Professional Development Day, we actually had a session for teachers who might be interested, and we made it clear that the board was considering this evening, and that it was just an opportunity. So they learned in that session, but it is outside of just using Google Meets or Google Classroom. It actually provides additional strategies and ways to engage students through technology, which is not just relevant in the online piece that we're currently doing, but when we come back, we will continue to use Google Classroom. And this moves us away from just using PowerPoints or things like that to engage students. So it ramps things up. And then there are additional certifications past level 1, which we haven't incorporated or addressed at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, this is Mr. Rader, Mr. President.
Please go ahead, John.
Yeah, Dr. Kelly, could you speak just briefly? I actually have two comments / questions, but can you speak briefly to the reciprocal education? So if a teacher reaches out to a parent to ask a question or to follow up regarding performance, in order to receive this, does the parent have to respond and engage the teacher, or are they punished if a parent isn't reciprocal in their communication with the teacher?
Member Reyes, that's a great question. And there was a significant amount of dialogue between the LEAP committee members. And so these would be three two-way communications. So I send one out to you asking a question about one of your children, and you send a comment back. You may engage me in some questions, and there might be several opportunities to go back and forth. And there may be just a response from a parent such as, everything is fine, thank you for checking, and then that's the end of it. So we had talked about various ways to get a gauge on the types of questions or markers that might indicate a general response or a detailed response, just for our own metrics, but we did not include that as part of the plan.
Okay, thank you. So just to follow up on that, if they do send the communication, but the parent fails to respond, does that still count towards the teacher, or do they have to continue making efforts to contact that parent for it to count towards their goal of reciprocal?
So Member Reyes, that's a great question. So one of the things that they said is they felt like 3 was an adequate number of counts, because they could send out 6 communications, but only 3 return them back, because that is a very real possibility. Also, some of the teachers noted that it could be several days before a parent returns the communication. It may not be within the time frame. So they're not thinking they're just going to pick 3 and leave it at that. They're going to maybe send out 10, and if they get 3 or 5, they just know that they need to get 3 for the week.
Okay, thank you very much. And then my second question was going to be, in preparation for the meeting, I actually Googled the certification, and to the untrained eye, it looked like a 3-hour course. But this evening, you've indicated that it's actually a 10 to 15-hour course. So maybe you could just help clarify that a little bit for me.
Yes, there's 3 hours allocated from Google to complete the exam. So, depending on the level of people's test anxiety or different things like that, that is the 3 hours that they were discussing. But the course itself, and I verified with our IT director before we started the meeting this evening, it's 10 to 15 hours of preparation that we actually have 2 classes that can be led. Some people prefer to do the work collaboratively in a group, and some people prefer to do the work on their own. We sort of gave the example of Dr. Freeman received his doctorate at ASU in a classroom setting and worked collaboratively with people in that manner, while I received mine by working online at my own pace and not having to be somewhere at a certain time. So we're actually trying to differentiate the opportunities for teachers and their own learning styles.
No, thank you very much for that clarification.
Absolutely.
If I could have one more clarity question. So on the communication, when you're sending them out, in whatever method, you're sending them out, are you sending them out in English and Spanish, or just English?
These particular communications, Member Reyes, would be between the parent and the teacher themselves. And so if that particular teacher has the capability to speak in the language that the other family communicates in, they could send that out, but they may need another teacher or another staff member to assist them if they have a communication block. And so just like we do with parent-teacher conferences or any other time we need to reach out and speak to a parent, the teacher will find the way to do that with the resources that the district has provided. We have a language line and we have different things like that.
The only reason I ask about that, because the goal is to strengthen, I mean, the whole goal and the purpose of this site fund money is to strengthen communication, or do our best to strengthen communication with parents.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing, and I don't know the validity of it, is that what happens is in classrooms, and not any one particular classroom, where there's a large Spanish speaking perhaps population, it would mean that many times that's the language in their home. So what happens is they use the classroom time to go, excuse me, and then they're not understanding. And then the teachers are saying, and this is more than one classroom, the teachers are saying, well, have your mom ask me in Spanish. And so I'm trying to just make sure that if we're going to try, and our goal is for the monies to increase communication, we're looking at all vehicles, so that actual online virtual classroom is exactly that for all students, regardless of the ability or the need of the languages, so that if Spanish speaking or other languages need extra help, they're not doing it during the mainframe when everyone there is trying to get the same help. And so that's why I asked the question of, is it in Spanish or English? Because if it's in English and you're sending it to a predominantly Spanish family, one, I'm sure they may not communicate, and two, I'm not even sure, unless someone would translate, how they would know how to respond. So it's more feedback than anything.
Okay, thank you, Member Reyes, but I think you bring a good point. I do want to emphasize that this is one-to-one communication during a planning time that the teacher might have, or after school or before school, not a 1 to 27 communication like an email blast. Those, like, you can't blast and say who's coming to conferences next week and count 3 people who say yes I am as part of that communication. Does that make more sense?
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity.
Sure.
All right, any other questions? If there is not, may I have a motion?
I'll move the governing board approve component 5 of the FY21 classroom site fund plan as presented.
And this is Amy, I'll second.
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos, Dr. Ramos, Mrs. Reyes,
Yes.
Mrs. Soshenek.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, I have some issues getting my phone working over here.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos.
Thank you, appreciate that. With that item, move on to number 13, Dr. Freeman. Phased reopening.
All right, I have lucky item 13 tonight. So I think members are pretty aware right now of the 3 COVID metrics we're monitoring, and what constitutes the minimal, moderate, and substantial risk. People are now kind of speaking in code, whether you're green, you're yellow, or red. And substantial risk would mean distance learning. Moderate risk would mean hybrid or blended delivery models, and minimal risk would mean that students could return to in-person learning. Of course, we would have mitigation strategies in place for all 3 of those, kind of assuming that the new normal, even if the metrics were low, would still be precautions in spreading germs, viruses, and other things that could be communicably dangerous to people's health. So we have put together a short PowerPoint to kind of review where we are with metrics, and the board asked for a recommendation for reopening. So we'll try to go through what we think the best approach would be given the metrics that we're seeing right now. The target that we were asked to look at is the week of October 19th, which is the week following the fall break. So we're right now in the last week of the first quarter session. As was mentioned, doing conferences and updating families on how the kids are progressing through the learning objectives that we've had first quarter. We would propose starting the second quarter, phasing in a hybrid model. And the hybrid model is what we'd say in the metrics terms, yellow or moderate risk. And the reason you would do a hybrid model was to limit the number of people in a school or a classroom at any one time to help facilitate some distancing between students and staff and everybody who's present. It's a key mitigation factor when combined with others, mask wearing, wiping services, sanitizing the school, washing hands or sanitizing hands to help prevent the spread of any kind of germs and virus. So in the next slide, what you're going to see is the latest metrics for the Littleton School District. There's 3 lines, and we've presented these before. They are the percent positive, the percent of infections, and the percent per 100,000 illnesses. And so what you see is 2 sets of metrics. I've kind of indicated them by red, yellow, and green bars on the left. So for percent positive, the moderate range is between 10 and 5. Perlette, your phone is still open. The moderate range is between 10 and 5. And that is for both the percent positive and for the illnesses. And the other range is the one that is represented by the diamond shape, and that is the percent illnesses per 100,000. So way back in July, the first metric that I have in the graph on the far left side is the one that was reported on August 6th based on July 19th data. And so you can see at that time, our illnesses were 250 per 100,000. Our percent positivity was at 18.5%, and our illnesses were at 7%. Now, what's happened is the illnesses have dropped down, and you see the bottom line drop down and has maintained a fairly low trajectory. And there is some statistical averaging being done by the county because of the low incidence. They're extrapolating some data from Maricopa County. And so most of the data we have for the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks is at 2%, and that's a rounded number. So we're fortunate that that number has been staying down. The other 2 numbers you can see were in rapid decline from August 20th down to about September 10th. And then what we saw after that on the report for 9/17 and 9/24 was a 2-week increase in our percent positivity. This was causing us quite a bit of concern and wondering if that trajectory was going to continue to increase or to drop. And so as of the last report sent to the board in their update last week on Thursday, October 1st data, we dropped dramatically to our lowest percent positivity to 5.7. And so this is just a great example of the volatility of that measure. What I understand is Arizona is up about 1% this week, in this morning's news on positivity. So if we were to reflect something like that, we would still be below 10 and in the hybrid range. You can see at the same time we had a decrease in positivity. We had a slight increase in the percent per 100,000. And so while the illnesses hospitalization stays low, there has been some increase in COVID reported illness that hasn't required people to have to go into the hospital. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Now, we'll have more data this Thursday and another round of data over break. So we'll be paying careful attention to that. But those are the latest measures that we've got from Maricopa County about this school district, our school district in particular. The next slide, what I've done is just contrasted Littleton's measures with the state and the county. So you can see it really stands out, our drop from 10.9% to 5.7. But then what you see is the data really clustering together with Littleton and the county and the state. So down at the bottom, the need for people to have hospitalization, the illnesses per 100,000, and the percent positivity are all grouping together pretty neatly down there in what would be considered the moderate range, and for hospitalizations in the minimal range. If we were going to think of that in colored terms, 3 greens and 6 yellows. Littleton has 1 green and 2 yellows right now. That just shows you kind of comparison to the county and the state, and we're kind of back in that trend. For a long time, the West Valley, the Towson region, and our school feeder system was a hot spot, and we seem to now have leveled out to look more like the county. In the next slide, these are the images from the website from the county. Last Thursday, they had us coded for distance. The Thursday before, they had us coded for hybrid. And not exactly sure why, because our numbers improved. And I think they may be looking at a 2-week range or longer. So certainly we'll be monitoring that this Thursday and reporting that to the board if there's any changes or any indication that things are headed in the wrong direction. Certainly make sure everybody is informed. In the next slide, what we've done is we've reviewed the models for delivery. And this is model C, the classroom teacher model. What we've done is we've used an example of 24 students in a classroom. They are distance learning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesday is a little bit of a shorter day. They're represented as being at home because they're all in their little home box. Every child is in a different place doing their learning remotely, distance learning in our dynamic digital delivery system. Now, another model, which we would be shifting to, is the B model, which is the hybrid model. In this model, students are divided into 2 separate groups. Those 24 students would be 2 groups of 12. Of course, they could be 13 and 11 or some other variation, even 15 and 10, because we want to keep families together attending school on the same day. There are some logistical considerations principals would have in grouping these kids, but just to say between 24 and 28 kids, they would be evenly split. And Monday and Tuesday, some of the kids would be in with the teacher. And on Thursday and Friday, the other group of kids would be in with the teacher. Everyone's doing the same activities all 5 days. But some kids have the benefit of being at school with the teacher and reconnecting socially. The kids who are at home are going to have synchronous and asynchronous instruction, and the teacher is going to continue to use Google Classroom and Google Meets for their delivery model. So the kids will be having content delivered on the same platform they have now, whether they're having the opportunity to be in school in person or to remain at home. So there's no reteaching the same thing on Thursday and Friday that you taught Monday and Tuesday, and people working independently on the off days. That delivery is integrated all through the week. Now, one of the ideas that we came across as we were collecting feedback from teachers and from families is an opportunity to blend models B and C together. So in the next slide, what you see is our 24 kids now are 16 in the classroom and 8 of them at home in their own separate rooms. We believe that we can put 16 kids in a classroom, given the size of our classrooms, and still maintain adequate social distancing. So there is some potential based on the requests of families and of teachers. So you'll be able to have a new hybrid blended model where the same teacher is responsible for some kids who are going to stay home every day and some kids who are going to be able to come in and have the same kids on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday and Friday, just plainly by the numbers of people who are selecting their preference for in-person or staying at home. Finally, one of the other things that could happen in the next slide, we added this in, is that what you see is with the typical hybrid model with 12 kids coming Monday and Tuesday and another 12 coming Thursday and Friday, is it would be possible for 4 of those kids to stay home, and you could still have a hybrid model where the kids don't get to come the 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, but they do get to come 2 days like a hybrid, and the teacher could still have some kids staying at home, sharing synchronous and asynchronous time. The other reason that we thought it was important to show this to the board is it's possible that if some of the kids in the room, in a hybrid room, were to become ill or need to isolate, they could still benefit from instruction while isolating in their home and not really disrupting the hybrid model. So depending on who's sick and for how long, students who may need to be isolated at home, even though they're asymptomatic, could continue with their learning, much like they're doing right now in the first quarter. They could do 10 to 14 days of distance learning while the rest of the class is in the hybrid model. Our recommendation, going over the data with families, teachers, and principals, is that the principals use these models to align the teacher and family preferences, and that they could actually use all 3 or all 4 of these models in their school, even in the same grade level, to best align with the needs and preferences of the families and of the staff, so that we can get the most kids back in person without really putting anybody's health risk at danger, and without having to have any coercion or higher level of conflict that the board asked about last week, or at our last meeting, I'm sorry. And so we think it's the best solution to allow the best alignment of all of those factors together. Now, principals are still working on the finer details of these, and as was mentioned before, the parents don't all get back to us all the same day, so we are still chasing some people down. But I think allowing them to use the feedback data they have to design any of these delivery models is going to get us the best solution with the least amount of conflict resistance and the most number of kids who have an opportunity to be in school in the second quarter. And those are the models that we came up with. Is there another slide? What we thought we would do is, because the governor insisted in his order that we used a similar schedule when we started out distance learning, is we want to adopt that. And so this is consistent with what was previously published in the handbook, an early, middle, and a late start time and dismissal time. Right now, everybody would be home on Wednesday, so we haven't published an early release time. On-site services would be by school, and that is to assist families who have internet challenges or other things, much as we're doing now in 3 of our cafeterias. And as we discussed the logistics, the preference of staff both in the district and at the school is, instead of having a hard start with buses rolling Monday morning, would be the first time we would roll buses would be Thursday morning. What we're concerned about is everybody going on break, maybe getting a little rusty, and communication not getting to everybody. So what we'd like to do is, depending on the board's motion and decision this evening, is start the communication this week. But when we return from fall break on Monday to distance learning, is all of the times, logistics, staggered dismissals, bus routes, bus stop route times, school lunch information, and all of that could be distributed for 3 days in a row for the first 3 days of the quarter, so that we have a greater chance of success of kids being at the right bus stop at the right time, not being left in the neighborhood, and making sure that all the parents are aware. We could start, with a hard start Monday morning, but we think we have a better chance of having fewer errors and greater success if we roll buses Thursday morning for the first round of picking up kids for hybrid in-person instruction. And we'll be monitoring those COVID statistics over the next 2 weeks. I think unless they shoot up a lot and create what we might think is a dangerous situation, that we would go ahead and execute the plan. The other thing is, since we're starting with 3 days of distance learning, if there's any reason to make any adjustment, we'll have 3 days to make sure everybody's aware of that. Now, one of the other questions that comes up a lot is, what do we do when people are sick? There are rules, guidelines from the county on how long people need to isolate or be quarantined, depending on whether they have a positive test or not, depending on whether they have symptoms or not. And so all of that is run through one office, where our nursing team collaborates with our HR team to track, record, and monitor that. It is possible that students may have to stay home and staff may have to stay home, but the grade level or the school may continue to operate with some in-person services. There is a term now coined as an outbreak. Outbreaks are going to be regulated and advised by the county health department. An outbreak is defined as positive test results from 2 different people in 2 weeks that do not share some other form of common events or common bubbles. So if they both came from the same classroom, they're not separate events. There's some spread in the classroom. If they came from the same sports teams, there's not an outbreak because the sports team has a problem. But if there's an outbreak in classroom isolated to some kids, and then a separate sports team that those kids aren't involved in, there's 2 separate groups of people that are both having positive results at the same time, it would constitute an outbreak. We would be connected with the county. Either the county would be informing us or we would be asking them. And then there is official communication that goes out to families explaining what's happening. We've been in the process of collecting information, experiences, and letters from other school districts that started already. So we think we're on pretty good footing as far as communication goes when things are happening, and trying to be really transparent with staff and families about the impact of any illness in our community, particularly individual classrooms or schools. I think that's an overview of some of the things we've covered about COVID mitigation. We have a mitigation plan document that we are ready to publish on the website, and I'm checking to see if we were able to get that attached to the board document. Yeah, so the plan for reopening is there in PDF form. It would be converted to HTML on the website. So regards Ms. Reyes to your question about language, you can change the language of the HTML on the Littleton website to a whole number of languages. So it can be read and interpreted by lots of families if they have a language different than English. We didn't want to put that on the website before the board acted because we were afraid that would signal to people we were returning to in person without the other communication or information going out. But it is ready to go with all kinds of information about the models, mitigation, procedures, and those kind of things. You certainly can look at that and give us feedback on it. I wasn't going to review it with everybody this evening, but we wanted you to know that the work was done and ready if you wanted to vote to having us go back to in person. On the material provided for you this evening is the form of a motion, which has some blanks in there if the board members want to modify that motion. So we're considering the week of October 19th with continued phase reopening and model CB in a blended version for grade levels all and for programs all, as was discussed by the board at the last meeting. So you can just use our recommended inserts, or you can modify those based on your discussion. I think, Mr. President, that's everything that I had to hopefully inform the board and help guide their decision tonight about when they want to move to the next phase. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions, and staff is also prepared if they need to jump in.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. All right, any of you have any questions or comments that you'd like to direct to Dr. Freeman or the staff at the present time?
This is Kathy. I have a few that I think I just need some clarity on, because it gets a little confusing as you're going through the models. I just want to make sure I understand. So I saw the models. I just want to make sure the models C and B, and that's the blended model, where you have 16 potential children in a classroom. And that classroom, what I didn't quite grasp is 16, is that every single day with the exception of Wednesday, with no at-home learning?
Can you put that diagram back up there?
Thank you.
Ms. Reyes, Mr. President. So the B plan has 2 days in school for half of the kids each time, right?
Yeah, that one I'm clear on. Thank you.
Okay, so the C plan is everybody home every day, all the time.
Got that.
But not everybody in our school district fits neatly into those 2 plans.
Right.
So the idea would be that in some rooms, some of the kids would still be, Mr. Nielsen, I think we're getting some feedback from
me. Sorry.
Some of the kids would be in the B model. So they would still go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The other kids at home would be 5 days a week remote. The idea we came across is, depending on the blend of those, Ms. Reyes, if it's 16 kids or less, they could come all 4 days and still have distancing. If it's more than 16 kids, they would have to stay on the 2-day-a-week plan.
Okay, so this one is really not a set in stone model. It just depends on who shows up and what the outcome of the classroom looks like at the time they show up. So in essence, parents really, they could plan for this with their work, but they really won't know until this goes full force. Is that true?
So what will have to happen is, to answer your question, Mr. President, Ms. Reyes, when the principals go through what all the parents have asked for, that one of the questions we've asked is, do you want to change your teacher to get the model you want? Do you prefer to stay with your teacher even though if it's not your first choice of model? And they are going through and putting these together and letting parents know what we've come up with. We like this model, the one that's blended with the kids being able to come to school 4 days with 8 kids staying home, because it's a different kind of blend. Instead of splitting the week, we're splitting the class. And really, it's pretty close to the ratio of parents who want to come to school and want to stay home, which is about 2/3, 1/3. It's just that they don't all fall into the right room in the right blend every time.
So let me ask you a question, follow up to that as an educator. So if I finally kind of got used to at-home learning, whatever that means, right? Now I really like this model. I choose to send my child Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I am in a whole nother classroom. Does that not cause some anxiety again when these children are already kind of full of anxiety from, shuffling to a whole new environment, shuffling back to with the teacher that they have no idea who they are? And can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. I think if all conditions being equal and kids being healthy and having nobody with any risk factors or comorbidity in their home, that staying with the teacher, even with a little bit of a different model, would be a good choice because of the importance of the relationship between the teacher and the student. But in some families where children may have immunity issues of their own, or someone in their family does, it may be a very hard choice for them to have to change teachers to maintain a heightened level of safety in their home if they have extended family all living together or those kind of things. So I think if the point you're making is keeping kids with their teachers after they've developed relationships for a quarter of a year, I certainly agree with that. And these are the kind of decisions that we don't want to make for families or impose on them. So to give them the greatest flexibility and honoring, what they're telling us as far as those go, and then trying to fit those together, is what we would ask the board is, instead of just all 1B model 2 days a week, is allow some classrooms to have this unique blend. The other thing is we think even though, people make these preferences, kids are going to get sick and, people are going to get sick, and the room is going to need to adapt to the kind of things. And even if it's not a COVID, it could just be the flu. Flu season's around the corner, and the symptoms are very similar. So kids could have the flu and still be isolating at home. Unless they're tested, the assumption's going to have to be they have COVID, even though they have flu, unless they go to the doctor and get confirmed otherwise. So we're in for kind of a rocky boat ride, through the next quarter's waters, no matter which way we choose to go.
Okay, and then one final question on the busing. So the buses come at whatever scheduled time there is. Let's say we have 16 kids getting on a how many kids are you putting on a bus, and how are you doing that? Did CDC issue guidelines under safe, transportation?
Yeah, transportation is a sticky problem. And so Parents, will be informed about the limitations of distancing. Of course, masks will be required. We can add some sanitation to the buses, but we can't carry the liquid sanitizer because the alcohol is flammable, so it can't be on the bus, but other kinds of disinfectant wipes can be. What we do with the kids to create distancing, Ms. Reyes, is you start out seating the kids, one student to a seat. And those seats are benches, they're designed really for 3 little kids. Right. So you load the bus with 1 student per seat to start, and when all of those seats are filled, you start alternating with 2 kids to a seat. And it's far from ideal. So we need to make sure parents understand that. Right. But there's no additional fleet of buses or drivers to provide that service. So families just need to be aware of what our limitations are when we provide that service. But if we cut the number of kids being bused in half, the ability to have half as many kids on the bus isn't exactly, a third, which would be 1 per seat, but it's 1 per seat and the other half of the seats have 2. So by diminishing the number of kids coming to school on any particular day, we can get the most distance on the bus as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kathy. Any of the rest of you have any other comments?
This is Mr. Rader. I guess my only question is, and I really do applaud the administration for coming up with such an innovative solution to allow our kids to come back to the classroom in a safe way and to be dynamic and flexible enough to deal with all the unique situations that are going to come forward. My question was, are our classrooms equipped with the technology to allow teachers to provide synchronous education to both in classroom and students participating digitally at the same time? Or will teachers need to teach one group of students that are sitting in their classroom and then reteach, if you will, to students that are participating synchronously online?
That's a great question, Mr. Rader. So what we do not have is, a camera device that would follow the teacher around the room. We don't have a GoPro apparatus that gives the teacher a selfie kind of view. What will happen is, just like it's happening now, is the teacher will have a seat at a regular table height, their raised table height. They'll have their laptop open like they do right now, and they'll be providing instruction to kids. Some of those kids will be in the room. They're going to have their laptops open too. So synchronous and asynchronous instruction is going to, where the synchronous instruction is going to look the same. Kids could listen in on other activities in the room if we open up a Google Classroom, Google Meets forum for them to join. But otherwise, the day and the activities, synchronous and asynchronous activities, look the same whether you're in the room or at home. So when you have a time when the whole class has their laptops up and the teacher's on their laptop, just like she may be in her classroom or her house right now, there's a huge amount of similarity to the kind of things that are happening right now, only some of the kids are sitting at school and some of the kids are sitting at home. And Wednesdays will be a day when, everybody reconnects, one-on-one, if they're keeping up what their issues are and what kind of additional support they need. We realize that, it's far from a perfect model with ideal, I don't know what you would call space age futuristic technology. We're really happy that we've been able to secure enough computers for every kid to be one-on-one. I'm not sure, that 5-year-olds on laptops, is is an ideal way to educate kids, but it's what we have given the conditions we have right now. And so we're going to proceed with what we think are all of our best options, not just the best option, but the best options we have available to us. So that's the way that's going to look. And school, being in school in person is not going to look like it used to. It's not the old normal. It's going to be a new kind of normal. And so, but it will be challenging for teachers. I mean, the going to distance learning has been very challenging, and juggling kids who are in and outside of the room will be challenging. I think even more so. So everybody is going to need some emotional support and some patience and some understanding as they start to, exercise new blended learning muscles and getting good at this. I think for the beginning of the year with distance learning, there was a huge push for people to get in and get going and get better at it. And we've seen a lot of people really grow tremendously. We've also seen a lot of people almost frustrate out, where some families are practically disengaging. We have to really get after them. So this in no way solves some of those challenges, but it does allow some kids to start connecting with the school in person again, and hopefully build a transition to someday when everybody can come back to being in person all 5 days. But the same thing, Mr. Rader, though, kids will, even if we're back for 5 days, we had kids who missed last year in December, days and days of school with the flu. Our attendance rate in December of last year was really bad. I mean, I think high single digits. So the ability for kids to take their computers home, and if they're not too sick to do work, to keep up with their schoolwork will be one of the ongoing benefits of having managed this crisis, is that anytime somebody needs to be at a distance, they can still participate in the learning activities at school. I know it's not ideal, and we'll continue to explore new technology and new methods and help teachers to develop, but that's where we're at. That might have been a longer answer than you needed, but I also wanted a chance to talk to everybody else, who's listening in on our board meeting today as well. I hope that answered your question.
It certainly did. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Amy Perlette, any questions or comments? If not, I just have two quick ones right here. I think Dr. Freeman, we talked last time about having sufficient number of teachers in classrooms to handle the number of kids coming back. We're going to take part of the, survey and find out how many were coming back. Do we have enough to handle what we're talking about in these models?
Mr. President, members of the board, that's a challenging question. So right now, with the number of staff we have, we are staffed appropriately for the number of students we have. So if we continue to increase the number of students, we're going to stretch our staff. We have, I cannot tell you yet if we have reached the perfect blend of students, model, and teacher preference. What we've told the teachers, the LEAP group, and the association is we're going to try to get these to match. And when they don't, we'll go through the people who are still, so that there's not a challenge for us to get more people to go online. People are already doing that now. So moving teachers to distance learning may not be their preference, but there's not a conflict in going that direction. It's people who have concerns for their health moving to the classroom where there's a conflict. So there will be a group of those people. What steps we thought would be to tell them we still need people to go to the classroom and ask for volunteers. If that doesn't work, we would ask for the medical documentation that they need to say that they shouldn't be there, and continue to problem solve from that point on. So I cannot tell the board at this time tonight that we have the perfect match to make all of these work. And it's part of the reason that we want to ask you to give the principals flexibility in designing the delivery in these rooms, to help give them the greatest chance of, lining everybody up without having to enter into that kind of conflict situation.
Thank you. That answers that. I guess the other one just would be attendance. I don't know if there's any concern with that, whether you're in classroom or whether you're on home. How do you make sure that we get the attendance right? And I really like the idea of those kids with flu or sicknesses, they can still be counted as in attendance. In the past, we've not had that. So,
yeah, attendance is a challenge for us, Mr. President, members of the board. What we're finding is, I'm gonna use a broad general term, which I'm gonna call family resources. Family resources have a lot to do with kids' success in schools. A lot of when we talk about family resources is the parents' ability to support the children in school, and we would consider those to be generational. But what we're finding with COVID is we have family resources that have changed that are situational. So we usually describe poverty in these two terms as well. Generational poverty are families that have had lack of opportunity for generation after generation. They live in poverty, their parents lived in poverty, and their grandparents lived in poverty. Situational poverty is better described as somebody who hasn't lived in poverty, their parents haven't, but they have a sudden job loss or some other collapse in their lives and find themselves suddenly jobless or homeless or something else, some calamity happens. That's situational. And so what we're seeing now is in some families where parents are frontline workers and having to go to work, is getting them to adequately supervise the attendance of their kids in our distance learning and getting to work on time and making a living to pay their bills are in conflict. And so where they could have had their kids at school, had them ride the bus or drop them off, their attendance would have been better than it is right now when they're at home, just because the supervision at home has been spread so thin. So there is not one rule or generalization that fits all of these families. Their situations are different and unique, and we have staff working with them on strategies for talking to their kids about logging in, following up with their kids. But it's a learning curve, not just to support distance learning, but to support expectations in your family that you haven't had to be responsible for as a parent because you were able to rely on the school. So we're finding lots of different challenges, different characteristics of families, different kinds of receptiveness. People who were really trying but are frustrated, and the frustration's taking over. So hopefully, making some of these changes will help with the variety of needs and challenges that families have, and match up a little better. I mean, what I hope is, we can make more progress with better attendance with a choice of models than we have today with just distance, or that maybe we had before with just in school, as you mentioned, like when kids are sick. So
what about lunches and recesses? Is that still involved?
So there is a mitigation plan for lunch and recess. Breakfast in the classroom will continue as it has before. And so those meals are prepared. They're brought out in rolling carts in separate containers that can be distributed to the kids. The principals and staff would like to have kids eat in the cafeteria. And so if there's half as many kids, they should be able to get through the line twice as fast. It won't be twice as fast because they're going to be twice as far apart. We're working with the food service department to not have as many choices for the kids. So the lunch line will be grab and go. We can feed students like we're on the summer feeding program. And I'm not sure how much longer that will go, but it should be in place for the next term, which means that the amount of time kids need to spend at a cash register will be different. We have cafeteria tables that are set up designed to facilitate the lunch of the whole school. So kids will have twice as much room between seats. We'll probably have them all facing the same direction so they're not breathing on each other. They'll be allowed to go outside and have some unstructured play, but the playground equipment will still be closed until the metrics are better, and the kids will have to clean up. We don't think we're going to start out with any kind of shared equipment, so there won't be balls. Recess is going to be kind of boring, but it will be a break from being in the room.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If I may,
So,
Kathy,
go
I
ahead.
just have a quick question. Have you discussed the criteria for children that may come back to school that have, maybe they're asthmatics, maybe they have allergies, and I cough in the classroom. I mean, you don't want to, 16 kids going and saying, "Oh my gosh, there's a kid, coughing." Will you send them to the nurse immediately, or do you have a protocol, or what's your thought, or have you even gotten that far?
Yes, there is a list of symptoms, and the challenge, of course, is some of them are fairly common. So what would happen is if a kid presents anything like that, they do go to the nurse, they get their temperature checked. The nurse will go through kind of a checklist health checklist inventory with them and observe them. If it's determined that they may likely have the virus, we have PPE materials in all the offices, so they can put on the protective suits and gear, isolate those kids in a room. Each school has an isolation room set up where the kids are away from other kids. We don't think it's going to be, a high volume crowded area. One of the things that we expect parents to do is to screen their kids for any signs before they even send them to school. But so we do have additional PPE for nurses for isolation until the kids can be picked up and taken to the doctor. Of course, there would be follow-up. They wouldn't be able to return for 10 to 14 days, depending on the circumstances around their symptoms. And it's a challenge because, as you know, kids can be asymptomatic and still be spreading. So the idea is that whether they're in the classroom or cafeteria or outside, they're still separated in the classroom units. And if those classroom units are in a typical hybrid model, that's only 12, 13, 14 kids. So they could all be notified through contact tracing the incident that happened, and school or the class might not necessarily be canceled, or even if excuse me, one cluster did, the other cluster could still continue as long as the teacher wasn't impacted. And we are going to work with state authorities to see if we can get some rapid testing for teachers. There's not going to be enough for daily testing for kids and teachers, but I think having some rapid test options in our schools would be really helpful in making people feel more confident and secure in attending. So that's an ongoing piece of work that we're not ready to, announce yet, but that's a work in progress.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on that? If not, we've got that motion up there. Do we want to make a motion and fill in the blanks on this?
I can give it a shot. This is Kathy.
Go ahead, Kathy.
So I'll move the governing board consider the week of October 19th. Specifically, we were talking about Thursday, if I recall correctly. as the start date for continued phased reopening with Model C, B, and blended for all grade level or programs deemed appropriate for the level of COVID metrics in the district.
I'll second.
Thank you, John.
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sashanek.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Dr. Freeman, item number 14, ASBA annual meeting, business meeting.
Mr. President, members of the board. So in the past, School Boards Association, we've kind of had a meeting where we nominated everybody for all of these jobs, but because of changes in the environment and changes in the executive leadership, we're trickling these out at 3 separate meetings. And so I think this is the last of 3 for you to consider. And so the information that members need is there's an annual business meeting. Now, if you had an opportunity to go to the annual meeting of the School Boards Association, so I think, for instance, Miss Reyes would have gone when she got an award. They typically were held at the Biltmore Conference Center. And so, you know, there are exhibits, there are breakout sessions, there are keynote speakers, there's luncheons, there's awards, you know, all of those things happening at the annual meeting. There is a strand for superintendents. 1 year, our board, I think Mrs. Nielsen, Miss Myrick, and I gave a presentation with the Chandler board on effective boardsmanship strategies. So there's an opportunity to make presentations. But one of the events at the annual meeting is the election of officers and the conducting of association business. And that happens on December 3rd. Now, I'm pretty sure, going through the materials, that's going to be virtual this year. So in the past, you might have been able to go into the ballroom and say you were representing the Littleton School District and had the vote. Of course, under the circumstances that we're operating today, you know, we probably need to register that person as the delegate for this meeting. And then I think that takes care of all the meetings that we need a name for. So the person who you nominate and elect to do this will be participating in conducting some of the business of the state association, I think, including the election of officers for the coming year. And I think, what do we have? Dr. Ramos is the delegate for the county meeting. And she could be the delegate for this meeting. I think Ms. Ramos, you've been to this meeting before, have you not? The annual meeting? I think that's one of them that she's previously attended. So she may have some idea, as well as Kathy. I don't know about the rest of the members. Ms. Sausnick may have gone in one of her roles. So, Mr. President, if you just want to kind of open it up to members, lead the discussion, and figure out how we can best be represented, then you guys can make a motion and get that done.
We'll go ahead and open that up. You say December the 3rd was that date on that?
Date and time are in the material.
Dr. Freeman, is this a Zoom meeting, or how is that what you said? It's some type of Teams or Zoom or some kind of meeting? I mean, or did I misunderstand you?
That they've been doing virtual, and I think they've been doing Zoom. Have they been doing GoToMeeting? Zoom Zoom is a lot more common and easier, I think. So the law conference was in Zoom.
This is Amy, and I wouldn't mind representing the district, but certainly if there was someone else who really wanted to go, I would be fine not attending as well.
Well, I could attend it as well. So.
I'm fine if you want to go. I'm fine if Mr. Nielsen wants to go. I've been to several, and unfortunately, I don't always find them productive. I hate to say that, but that's how I see it.
Dr. Freeman, do you know when, one of the other things that came up, I've done a little bit more research on boardsmanship and certificates and things like that, and the new board instruction, boardman instruction, I think is that week. You know if it's on the same day, the same time? I don't remember when it was. They only offer that once a year, and it was one of the stipulations for any of you to get any of us to get any of the other awards or recognitions. You have to attend that one first.
Mr. President, I don't have all of that calendar information in front of me.
Okay.
We can put it in this week's update to the board. I know one of the challenges in the past was it was scheduled kind of before we knew the outcome of an election. And so it was difficult to, until you knew the outcome of the election, register the person to go. You kind of had to be on notice in case you win. Maybe you want to go this day. But with people being able to have virtual attendance, where you don't have to drive downtown or anything, I think it is a little bit easier. And, I think as far as Ms. Reyes' comments go, it is possible to drop in and drop out of these meetings, without having to go to your car, drive away, and then find another parking place later. So you can pick and choose a little bit how you spend your time.
Dr. Freeman, on our previous update, it says December 2nd is the new board member orientation for ASBA.
Oh, that's the day before. Okay.
So it's probably as part of the meeting.
I think that's the way they used to do it. There was a whole section, if you were a new board member, you could go, and there's a lot of discussion.
I remember when I first joined, Sandy took me to, I think it was called Bolts training.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, Bolts is something, I mean, we can talk about this later, but Bolts is the one that's in January. That's actually board instruction. This is one other one prior to that. Unless you take this one, then the Bolts and the law conferences don't count towards the hours that you need. So change a little bit. Anyway, Amy, have you got school on that day? Do you need to participate in school?
I will have school, but I have an abundance of sick leave, so I would be willing to take sick leave I know ahead of time. I can tell my district that I will be gone.
Would you then like to be the one that we insert your name in there for this year?
I would be happy to.
Thank you so much. Do I need to have a motion on that? All right, I'll move the governing board authorize Amy Sosanek to act as the board's delegate and Amy to act as the board's alternate. Oh, do we need an alternate?
I thought that was Dr. Ramos. No?
I can be the alternate there if we need to do that.
Okay.
So Amy to act as a board delegate and Curtis Nielsen to act as the alternate if needed or participate in the ASB's elections of officers at the ASB annual business meeting.
I'll second that, Curtis. It's Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sashanek.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. All right, I think that takes care of most of everything on the agenda. The only thing that I see left here is recess to the executive session.
Yes, we're going to recess and close this Zoom, and then we're going to recess to the executive session and close out this Zoom. We'll open another Zoom that is for authorized members only. The board will not take any action following the executive session. So this meeting will be able to recess as soon as the board finishes their discussion.
Do we need to have a motion for recess, or do I just call a recess?
I'll move the governing board convene into an executive session pursuant to ARS 43-103 for the purpose of discussing the superintendent's evaluation and performance goals.
Thank you, Don.
Dr. Ramos seconds.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sashina.
Aye.
Okay, we'll be back at that new meeting. Can I give you 5 minutes to take either a brain break or a bathroom break, and we'll be back?
Thanks.
Does anybody need to have the meeting number or code texted to them? All right, you already have that. Okay, and we're going to take 5 minutes.
Yep.
All right.